Okay, we're recording. So anybody got a question? Raise your hand and jump right in there.
When are the queens going to be ready?
End of May. End of May.
I got one, Joe.
Okay, go ahead.
On the, are you feeding sugar or corn syrup?
Sugar.
Sugar. Well, what can you tell me about corn syrup? You know, I've heard bad things about it. I'm just
Corn
wondering.
syrup, you can get by with feeding corn syrup in the spring. They will sometimes go to it and take it a little better than sucrose, but you can't feed it in the fall because it gives when they store it, it'll give them, the bees belly problems. You just don't really want. You really don't want to feed it in the fall.
Huh. Well, I guess you dilute it down too, don't you?
Yeah,
Isn't
they
it stronger
usually
than sugar?
Yeah, it's quite a bit thicker.
Well,
People do different things. Some people cut it half and half on that. I don't know. It's pretty thick stuff.
Well, I hope the price of sugar comes down before spring.
Don't we all?
Yeah, boy. Well, all this Corona stuff is, you know, you don't know. It may stay up, may go up. Who knows?
Yeah, here we go. Go ahead, Bruce.
Why is sugar so expensive now? I mean, it has really shot up.
I have no clue. I know back in the spring they did have a little bit of weather problems on the sugar beets part of it in the country. I think it's just like everything else is Corona. They use it to price gouge. You know, what gets me, sugar is on the spot price is just about between 14 and 15 cents a pound. Why is it at the store you're paying 5 times that? That's crazy.
In Walmart down here, we shot up to $11.57 for a 25-pound bag of great value sugar. And that's like 35% increase in the last 90 days, which really kind of scares me.
Yeah. Well, if you raise a lot of bees, though, that's one thing you can't be without, and that's the sugar.
Remember last year about February is when it dropped down so low. I'm hoping that it does that again about February.
If anybody has just come in here, you click on the participants down there, and you get another window, split window, and you can raise your hand. If we don't get any more than this, we can probably just talk without talking over each other. But typically, there's enough people in here, and raise hand works pretty good.
Well, Joe, when I click on that, it just shows everybody that's on, and then at the bottom, it's got an invite button. What do I mash on?
Is there somebody see that? Bruce, where's that at? Because it don't show it on my screen, being the host. Where's the
again?
It's on the bottom right, Joe. It's on the bottom right.
Bottom right. John?
Actually, on my screen, it's right to the left of center. When you move your cursor down to the very bottom, guys, and participants will pop up, and then you got that little arrow. You just tap on that and open it up, and then it opens up the window, and the lower right is your raised hand symbol there.
I don't show none of
that. Go ahead, Randall.
Okay, now that.
Can you hear me okay, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to be making some sugar bricks. Right now, I'm just doing the mountain camp and just spraying a little bit of Honey Be Healthy on it just to draw them up to the sugar.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about on my sugar bricks, I was wanting to just add water, a little bit of vinegar, and I was wondering what you thought about maybe adding wintergreen to it. just like a drop of it. Do you think that is?
I mean, it'll entice them to come up there, maybe.
Well, that's what I was wanting to do, you know, because sometimes it seems like I've had sugar on top of them and they'd be alive, but they really wouldn't come up to it. So that's what I was wanting to do. But I was just going to put a drop like in each batch. That ought to be enough, wouldn't it?
I think it. How many pounds of sugar you can put in a batch?
Well, I'll be doing probably 10-pound batches. I'll do it in 10 pounds so I can mix it up.
I'd probably put a couple, 3 drops. It won't hurt it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that was the reason why I always used to put the Honey Be Healthy in there. But I've got this wintergreen, and I thought, well, I might as well use it. So, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you familiar with Kent Williams Winter Mix?
He's told me that before, but I've not really. I forgot what he uses.
Yeah, I used it last year on half of my hives, and the half that I used it on did a whole lot better than the ones that I did just plain sugar.
Good girl.
Of sugar, vinegar, apple cider vinegar, citric acid, and Honey Be Healthy. And the bees really seem to go after it.
Yeah, I think that's the same. I think that's the same thing you feed in the summertime. Yeah.
I also put a shim on top, and then I put some insulated foam. And I learned that you need to put the foam with the foil on one side, because if you don't, the bees will eat through the foam. So I put foil in the top of that shim, and the bees don't try to eat through it then. But they've done real well on it.
No. Go ahead, Bruce.
So I'm taking dry sugar, cane sugar, and I do add a little bit of pollen to it, pollen sub, and I'm putting it right on the newspaper with a shim. And it's twofold. Number one, the bees obviously have something to play around with, and they'll come up there and they'll chew it, and hopefully they don't take all their honey. But the real benefit is we have warm days and cold nights, and the bee breath will condense and then drip on the bees from the top of the hive at night and chill them. But if you've got that sugar up there, it absorbs all that moisture, and it turns into a soft sugar cake. Because I start out with just keep it simple, use dry sugar. It turns into a soft sugar cake, and continues to absorb that moisture whenever the bees breathe, especially if you've got a lot of bees in a hive. I might try that Camp Williams. It might be an improvement, but I mean, I try to keep it simple, just dry sugar on a newspaper.
Yeah,
the Kent mix also acts as, like you're saying, it's hygroscopic, and so if there's any condensation, it drifts back down on the mix and doesn't get to the bees. And I put it right on top of the frames, and I use parchment paper I get from Dollar Tree.
Okay.
Go ahead, Randall. Randall, you there? Maybe you can't unmute.
John Roton.
Can you unmute yourself, Randall? Go ahead, Jim.
I've got a question for everybody, and well, you too, Joe. I'm keeping some bees down here in Arizona for really the first time successfully. What is a good kind of handy little pollen sub feeder that I can build? It's simple. What would you recommend?
You got any extra boxes there?
Yeah.
Just throw it on the bottom board and set a lid right over it. They can't get much easier than that. They go right in there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a thought.
Maybe somebody's got a better idea. Guys, I'm gonna mute everybody. So when I call on you or you want to talk, you have to unmute yourself. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So if you want to talk, just unmute yourself. We'll get a little bit of back feed in there, other people in the background. The pollen you can do about anything really. Just as long as you keep it dry. You can take a 4-inch pipe out there and throw an end on it or tape the end of it up and put it on an angle and they'll feed on it just fine.
Joe, I found the bees in the chicken feed today.
Oh yeah, eating the pollen.
They'll go for anything.
I noticed the last 3 weeks here, it's been pretty off and on, and they have just been hitting a dry pollen substitute. Like, well, in the last 4 weeks, they've ate 50 pounds. I mean, that's how bad they've been hitting pollen. Really been hitting it hard.
Joe, speaking about the pollen sub, how do you feel about it stimulating the queens this time of year? Do you think it's okay, or should you be careful with it?
They're not bringing any nectar in. I personally, I know the Canadian beekeeper doesn't feed any dry pollen in the fall. I really don't know. I've never seen it to be a problem. I mean, I guess if you had some eggs in there in a weaker hive and the cluster shrunk and they won't leave them eggs, you know, there's a chance you could kill them. I don't know which is worse, feeding them dry pollen or having them fire out there and running themselves out all over the place looking for something. I really don't know the answer to that.
So I'm gonna sell some nucs this coming year, but I'm going to instead of giving them a adjuster box, I'm gonna actually give them a bottom board and a lid in a 5-frame box, just a regular box. And what I'm finding is it's easier for them to pick up and take the box, and then I get repeat business because now they've got a 5-frame box and they know how to split, or they want to know how to split. They want queens. They ask more questions. I get repeat business. So I mean, it's so easy to make a 5-frame box and a bottom board and a lid. So I just give it to them for $270 in Central Texas and get a lot of repeat business that way. What do y'all think?
You get $270 for it, that's all right. I can't get that here.
Yeah, that'd laugh me off the property if I tried that.
It's $270 for a nuke. A 8-frame single box is $450, and a 10-frame single box is $550 with a bottom board and a lid. Come to Texas.
Can I send some down?
I don't know. It's not that big a deal with me. I mean, the people, I get them in their box, and I always go through the box and show them every frame and show them their queen, make sure they got their queen, and get a little feeling about working the bees, you know, when you're going through it. I have quite a bit of repeat customers, so I am not going to say we're the one better than the other.
Speaking of being a repeat customer, I love your queens. They're fantastic. What are you going to breed this year? Anything in particular that you're looking at?
Yeah, if I get the right breeders through the winter, I'm going to probably run my line again this year. I've got some done some tweaking on that, and hopefully I'll have the Caucasians and the Carnies and Succobies, and you just never know what you're going to get out of winter. If you don't get them out of winter, you ain't going to make it.
Yeah, those Caucasians that you bred were just absolutely fantastic. I've never seen a box of bees fill up so fast and just be so gentle at the same time. So anybody starting out, go for that by far.
They're usually pretty gentle. Now, there's always a thing, because you never know what you're going to breed with. I mean, they're open mated, and occasionally I get a mean queen. I've killed a couple here in my yard this year. I just can't put up with it. And I don't know what they bred with or what happened. I just can't raise mean bees. There's a preschool. Al Taylor, you've been here. There's a preschool property next to me. I can't have mean bees. Actually, I get along with her so good that's where my big mating yard's at, on her property. So that's worked out pretty good. I try to keep her happy, and she takes pretty good care of me. Has everybody got their bees to bed for the winter? I know Bruce hadn't. He's down there in South America.
I went over and did a bee removal out of a little trailer yesterday, and got the queen. And I mean, that was the only reason I was doing it. But I had a weak nucs. I went ahead and just combined it, and put the queen in there in a cage. And I figured in a couple of days I'll just turn her loose, and that's what you can do down here in the winter.
Sounds pretty awesome.
I hate to rub it in. I'm sorry.
What are you seeing as far as Africanized genetics there?
South of Interstate 10, which goes from San Antonio to Houston, in the rice fields, cotton fields, they're there. I've run into a couple of swarms trying to do removals about 2 years ago, but I haven't, and I've been doing bee removals down there this year, and I haven't found any more. I mean, there's obviously a big difference between just mean bees and Africanized bees. It's easy to tell the difference, but I haven't run into any of them this year. And I haven't heard of anybody that's found them this year either.
Well, guys, no more participants we got in here. You just unmute yourself. Just click on your next to you on the mic, or hover over yourself, and you can it says ask to unmute. Whatever. You guys not having any trouble unmuting, are you, Bruce?
So again?
You guys not having any trouble muting and unmuting your
No.
Okay.
I got a question I want to run across everybody though. And I've told Joe about this. I have got a 1,000-acre ranch around the corner. It's fenced in. The guy runs axis deer and whitetail deer breeders, and he doesn't spray. And there's just thousands and thousands of wildflowers all year round. And then he's got wild orange bushes, groves through the woods throughout that area. So I gave him a hive, and he talked me into, he said, you can put as many hives as you want on the property. And he's got gravel roads running around. He keeps it cut. So I'm going to shoot for 250 hives by the end of next year, and then the next one's going to maybe be 1,000 in about 3 years. If I can split, if I can do queens, I think I can keep growing. What am I missing? What am I not thinking about?
How much help have you got?
I was getting ready to ask how much.
I got 2 helpers. I think I'm good till about 250 hives, and then we better start figuring something else out. But because of the sugar costs, I'm thinking, and I've seen it for about 3 months now, that was just tons and tons of wildflowers up until the November. And he says they're there all year round. So, I mean, maybe that will help because sugar's so expensive. But the idea is to see if I can set up several yards in a circle and maybe get a better handle on drone congregation areas.
In 1,000 acres, one thing about it, I would think you'd want your hives all scattered throughout the 1,000 acres, and your mating areas centralized to the center of it. And I think you'd be pretty good shape. That's my opinion.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. We've got plenty of room to put in yards and make a central yard in circles. We're just trying to figure out, now, we want to do it here, there. There's just so many opportunities. And then at the same time, there's just wild orange trees everywhere. And I'd like to put a lot of hives near the wild orange trees. But I got some good queen genetics to get started with.
That's good.
Y'all wildflowers during the summertime, the bees work most of them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we got a lot of variety of wildflowers all year round. Even in the drought summer, we've got bee balm, horse mint, which just it'll bloom and have nectar and pollen even in the driest part of the month.
I'll tell you, a bush I've just come in contact this year. I didn't know anything about it. It's not native of this year. It's from the Mediterranean area, but it's called Vitex. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of it, but here it starts blooming about the first week of July, and it blooms the rest of the summer. Makes a bush kind of like what privet is, about that high. It grows in clusters like that, but bees absolutely cover it up. I'm going to try to dig a bunch of it up and transplant it. And the seeds, it's just loaded with seeds. But what few people I know have it, they've had to carry it to nurseries to get them to sprout. And I planted some back this summer, never got a single one to sprout. I don't know what you have to do special with them.
I will post a video in the sidebar over there. A friend of mine has figured out how to do it, and he made a video.
John, your Vitex is really easy to root. All you got to do is break your piece off and put a little bit of root tone on it, and it'll root.
Okay.
Well, what about getting the seeds to sprout?
I've had seeds to sprout also. Do not get it from the nursery. You want to find a tree that's growing wild. You don't want the cultivated Vitex. You want the wild variety.
Well, what I've got is there's a patch below the house here, a pretty good sized patch of it. That's where I first seen it at and found out what it was and all.
Mm-hmm. They do.
But I planted some back in the summer, and we had enough rain that they all made it. So they'll be doing good. But I'd like to get it scattered all around, because here in July on, July and August, there's not a whole lot.
Is the seeds on that a pretty big seed and hard shell?
They're hard, but they're small.
It's smaller than a millet seed.
Yeah, the ones you want are real small. The ones that you're talking about cultivated, they got big seeds.
I'm not a plant person, but my brother used to grow some super plants, different kind of, I forget, for the fairs and stuff. And they was real hard to get them to germinate. And he soaked them in hydrogen peroxide, the seed, overnight. And then that softens the skin up, and then a lot of times they'll sprout. I don't know if that'll work on that or not, but something a guy might try.
Might do it. Well, I put them in the freezer, you know, because a lot of seeds have to go through a cold spell. And I kept them in the freezer for a month probably before I tried to plant them. But that didn't help them any.
Our Vitex around here actually is an invasive weed.
Really?
It's that easy to grow. Yeah.
Well, do you make a lot of honey off of it? Or do
I
you
don't.
know?
I don't know. I have other stuff there, so I don't know. But I do know
Well,
the bees love it.
a fella that's in our bee club over there said there's an old man that he had known for years that had it. And this is over 30 years ago. And he said that he had one in his yard and he kept it trimmed. And he said it actually made a tree, you know, got about 30 foot tall.
Yeah.
And he said that his bees would fill up a honey super in a week off of it.
And it's a real fast growing tree also.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I've rooted some little pieces off of, it was actually my mentor here in Spartanburg that had some, and I got some seed from him, and then I broke some off and I've rooted them from those also. And they're pretty easy to root.
Yeah. I'm going to try to do some, I'm going to actually go dig a bunch of the small ones up and try to plant them, you know, sometime this winter.
That'd
So
be the
they
way to do it.
Yeah. And from what I've seen people that's got them, I mean, there's some seeds that just fall off will sprout, but I've had one fella that's told me he had a coffee can full of them. He scattered them all over and never did get one of them to come up, you know, doing it that way. So
there's several hundred varieties of them.
Oh, are they?
Oh yeah.
But do not buy the ones that the cultivated ones. You want the
wild ones.
The wild ones.
Well, these that was at the nursery, this boy, he carried seeds there, but two different fellas carried seeds and had them to sprout them. That's the only way. They'd done the same thing I did, tried to get them to sprout on their own, and they couldn't do it.
There's a small leaf and a big leaf different.
Oh, is there?
Yes, sir.
And there's also the leaf edge is more jagged on some, and I can't remember which one works. Or
one of them works better than the other.
Yeah.
Down here.
Oh, okay. Huh.
They almost look like a marijuana leaf.
Right, they do. And from what I've seen, they'll bloom when they're, you know, 3 foot tall.
Oh yeah, yeah, a little short. They do, and bees will just be all over them.
I think Langford put a link down there to chat for that video, didn't you, Langford?
Link for the video and the name of the ones that you want that the bees go crazy over.
Okay.
It's Randall or something, however you pronounce that. I've got 10 of them.
I got a piece of information. I don't know if how many of y'all use oxalic acid, but I just found this out. A fella that bought a couple of nucs from me last spring, actually put in swimming pools, and was talking about oxalic acid. And he said, well, they sell that at the pool store where he buys all of his equipment. And he said it's pretty reasonable. So I called yesterday, and I think it's $1.70 a pound. 5 pounds is paying cash is only $8.50 for 5 pounds. It's 99.6% pure. You know, most of it online will run you, you know, 18, 20 bucks. If anybody's interested.
That's the tip of the day. Thank you.
I run a generator on the back of my truck and a little one, and I go out and do pro vaping yards all over the place. I'm up to charging $15 a hive for each treatment.
Really?
Yeah, really. That's why I've got a generator and a pro vape.
I've been doing it for free. Yeah, I bought me one this year. Well, let me ask you, whenever yours is operating temperature and you dump the acid in there, mine, you know, most of the time it'll drop back down below 200.
Yes, it does. And then you just, you know, and I usually vapor from the back of the hive, and you
Yeah,
just
they
wait for it to
do.
go back up to 220, 228.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, normally I'll let it get back up to 217 or 218 and hit the next one, and it pulls it down. It seems like it does better after you've done several. I guess it holds the temperature better. I was just wondering if you could put insulation around that crucible on it, if it would hold its temperature better.
Yes, and I keep saying, I keep trying to remember when I go to the auto parts store, try to find some of that exhaust manifold material to wrap around it. I've had twice now, I've had where I filled it too full, the little cup, and I guess I didn't knock it down hard enough, and that sucker just popped right off while I was sitting there looking at it.
Yeah,
And so
hey,
the moral of the story is wear your mask.
I'll tell you, it's because the little tube gets stopped up, and it's got to go. That pressure goes somewhere.
Yep. The tube stops up.
I was carrying a little piece of copper wire to get it out, but you know, I'm running a 7/32 seconds chainsaw file in that hole, knock the propolis out. You know, it's a 1/4 inch hole, so it'll fit through there. But still, when you run it through there, a lot of times that stuff stops the end of that tube up, and that you can't get it out with that copper wire. But you can take I found out you can take a drywall screw and run it in there and twist it, and you know, pull it out and do that a few times. You clean it out, and then once you get it cleaned out, you're good till you stop it up, hit some more of that propolis like that, and jam it in there.
I've heard you put water in it a little every once in a while, and it kind of steams it and blows it out too.
I might do that too. Huh.
I'm gonna make a guess. When you guys start using it, it's always the first or second hive that you do it to when it blows the lid, because the tube's too cool out there, and it's not hot enough, and it condenses and stops it up. After it blows that lid one time, I've never had it do it again. I can treat 100 hives. But
it seems like the colder part of the year it's worse. Like we're gonna do it here in December. After it gets hot now, it don't do it.
Well, I had cut a bunch of 3/4 inch boards and to stop the front up with, but I'm back to just using rags. It seems like you can stop it up better. It doesn't seal it up good enough with just a board in front of it.
Too many different entrances.
We got too many different inches, so we have to do it in front and back.
Always wear your respirator. Never do it without a respirator. You never.
That's right. Bad stuff.
Yeah, I wear a respirator, but you can still occasionally you can smell it through it, or I can, and I don't know if that's good or bad.
I would check that, because there's the proper 3M element that it knocks out organic vapor, and you don't smell a thing.
Well, this is the one that come with the probate.
And you know, John, you got to change those out every so often.
Well, I only got it this year. I hadn't used
but I mean,
it.
Every so often.
If you'll read your
Really?
on there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If you can smell it, it needs to be
something wrong.
Well, I mean, I'm just assuming my beard is probably letting a little bit of it get through.
Like mine.
Yeah. Because when it was brand new, I could smell it some.
Us bearded beekeepers have it rough sometimes.
I'll tell you what. Hey, I think it saves your face a lot, though. They get tangled up in your beard, and you can slap them enough to get them killed before they get you.
Yeah, but if they get through, they get stingers. Hard to get rid of that stinger once it gets in there. Something else I found too is I really wear goggles when I'm doing it too, because I had one blow on me once and it actually burned a couple of places on my face. So I now wear goggles.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, I like how fast it is. It sure beats that one.
Oh yeah. And Joe's right. It always seems to be the first or second hive you do that it blows.
Yeah, once that tube gets hot enough, it'll never do it no more.
Yeah, I'm like at Randall. I guess that's Randall. I carry a generator in the back of my truck. You can make time doing that.
Now that was Bruce.
Bruce. I did find out one thing though. You better be careful when you're moving your cord, you know, as you're going down the hives, because if you pull on a little bit too much, that little copper tube stuck in the back of the hive, you'll bend that tube real easy on the end of the probate.
Has anybody tried to replace that tube?
You can buy a replacement for them. Buy the whole little cup if it's probate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
how
that guy's
that's how I
pretty
made
good.
my probate. I bought the kit, the drum and the caps from probate and made my own like Joe did.
Yeah. A little bit cheaper that way.
Yeah.
It also, if you've got more caps, you can load several of them down the line and someone comes along behind you and just
Keep working.
keep going.
We keep 4 and 5 caps at a time ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
I've also learned that you want to be careful about putting more oxalic acid in too quick, because if that cup is still warm, it'll actually harden in the cup.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You have to scrape it
Sure
out.
will.
I scrape out every time I do mine.
Yeah.
Well, I assume that where it recrystallizes every time you do it, that'll vaporize, won't it, each time? If you loosen it up.
All down that cup, it
won't.
won't.
It sticks to that
It sticks
plastic
to
cap.
sticks to that Teflon cap.
Yeah. They
But
won't
I mean, if you run your finger, I wear leather gloves to, you know, keep
Yeah.
from burning my hand. But usually I'll just stick my finger in there and break that stuff loose. And I assume the next time you put it on and flip it over, that'll fall right back in the crucible.
Yeah, I probably would that way.
It probably will. I had never always just kind of clean them out as I go.
Yeah.
And like you say, it does get hot. Better have some gloves.
Yeah. You know real quick when you got a hole in the glove.
And it'll eat your gloves up too.
It ain't good on your gloves either.
Oh yeah.
You got to make a chat easy. I don't have to sit here and listen. That's all I have to do.
Well, now I'll tell you something about that oxalic acid. When I went and got it yesterday, when they sold it to me, you know, I told them, you know, I assume a lot of people doing pools, they use it to bleach the wood, you know, decks and stuff around the pool. And they said, yeah. I said that, and the woman in there, she said, well, I use it to clean my shower with it. She said, I said, really? She said, yeah. She said it takes all the stains and everything off of your towel in your shower. And the fella, he said it's kind of like that CR or something that removes rust stains and stuff that you can buy. I forgot what it's called.
CLR.
CLR. He said it's basically about the same stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you what. Even though when you just mix oxalic acid with water, you don't want to be in closed rooms. Acid vapors. It will. Sometimes it'll kill you.
Wow.
Now, the vapors off of it and the water is not near like vaporizing it, but you still got, that's like muriatic acid. You know, they muriatic acid a lot of wells, and I've heard of guys get in there in a well house and be working over the top of the well and kill them.
Use a lot of muriatic acid in swimming pools also.
They do. They do that. I think they use that muriatic acid when they first put up the water in there. They call it shock treatment or something.
You can use that to balance, I believe it was used to balance the pH in it.
All I'll say is you guys make me glad I don't fool with that mess.
I got a different question. Probiotics for bees. I started trying to use something from strongmicrobials.com, and it's supposed to be a specific probiotics for bees. And you just sprinkle it like a powder on top of the frames about once a quarter. Has anybody had any luck with that, or tried it, or noticed any improvement in the bees?
I've used probiotics, but not for specific bees, because I think that's a gimmick personally.
Yep, been using it for years. I actually got an 8-frame deep out there with just a lid in the bottom board, and I put 32 ounces of pollen in it every morning, and I've got 4 scoops of the probiotic mixed in with it. I also mix it in with the sugar water.
I think it helps with some gut ailments, nosema and a few other things. I think it helps on that in that part of the realm of things.
Which probiotic do you use?
I had to.
Yeah, I use one from Tractor Supply.
Yeah, I do too, but I was trying to think the name of it. I got what Kent Williams told me to get.
Dumar?
Yeah, do more.
No, this one's like 5 times stronger than Dumar. I have to go out there and go out and look at it.
I don't remember what mine.
Right.
He uses the horse brand.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking it was for horses. Yeah. So you buy it cheaper. You can go in there and buy a 5-pound can of that for $40. Maybe just throw my $40 away, but it ain't killed the bees. And
I've always kind of wondered about a lot of that stuff, if it's more of a gimmick than anything, because bees that, you know, for years and years made it fine on their own.
yeah, but the thing of it is, they was out there taking care of themselves, and nature was breeding for survival. They wasn't breeding for honey and all this other stuff we breed for, and we took them out of the trees and put them in the boxes. It ain't nature no more.
No.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of your probiotics, you have to be real careful with them, how you handle them, because they die at certain temperatures. You know, it's a live bacterial culture.
You know, my philosophy is anything you can do to reduce the stress on the superorganism is going to help the bees. So, you know, I'm trying anything I can to give them a leg up, to give them a little bit of support.
You know, talking about stress, I'll give you a little for instance. A bee can handle stress from one thing pretty good. Typically, once a bee's stressed on 2 things, they typically abscond. They like you could they'd have a ton of mites in there and maybe can deal with that, but if they got, say you got a lot of people treat their hive, hadn't treated them all year, and they're just loaded with mites, and they go out there and oxalic acid them. Well, that stresses them. The second stress, come back next week and they're all gone. If you let them get that bad, usually 2 things stress them will make a bee leave the box. Another bee stress. I've seen hives leave the hive, have half a dozen hive beetles in it, and they left, and you go in the next box, you go in there, the hive beetles running all over the place, and they're just fine. So they've got their own, they're like people, they've got their own level of stress that bothers them.
What else stresses out bees?
Typical wax moths don't stress them out too bad, because usually after wax moths get in there, they're probably already dead, done and gone, or on the way out. But food stresses them, lack of nectar, pollen shortage, it gets too dry and they just ain't bringing nothing in. It'll stress bees. A lot of people, you get a lot of absconds there in August 1st September, and it's been dry, real dry, and they ain't got no food coming in, and you'll have hive just up and leave. They just, it stresses them to no end.
I've noticed more of my little hives do that than anything that time of the year.
I want to tell you what, if you'll start feeding them quicker, start feeding them dudes about second week in August or something, they'll stop absconding.
Well, these I fed, you know, I mean, it's bees I started over, but I feed them all the way through.
And still left?
Well, not all of them, but I'd have one every now and then that would leave. And I don't know what the reason for it was. You know, I'd catch them. Most of them wouldn't go too far and land. Of course, you know how it is when you got several of them, you don't know which one they come out of.
You better be watching what I'm doing here. We got Jenny, go ahead.
So first of all, I had trouble figuring out Zoom.
Okay.
So I came in a little late, but I was able to get in on the phone. Second of all, you all are amazing. Everybody said don't watch YouTube, but I feel like I'm among bee royalty. So thank you so much for all of you guys do. I'm just in awe, absolutely in awe, and having so much fun learning from all of you. And third of all, since we're on the topic of feeding, I don't know how to tell. Like I am getting that early, or when you get a new nuke or something, you feed it right away. But like, say you get to middle of summer, how do you know when to start feeding if you're going to be collecting the honey? Because from what I'm understanding, you don't want that sugar syrup in your honey. So how do you know when to feed otherwise than when you're starting a new hive?
When you go in a hive and you go through the inspection, and if there's no open cells, nectar, it's all capped, and there's no open honey, you need to be feeding. Or if you go in there and even if there are open and you shake the hive a little bit and there's none of that come out of there, you probably need to be feeding.
Okay, easy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else got anything they want to throw in on that? Knowing when to feed?
Well, I tell everybody first year to feed them all the way through, you know, unless they just quit taking it.
Yeah, I do too. On the first year, I would feed a nuke straight through. Or starting out with nuke, and then you're going to put it in a 10 frame or an 8 frame box and just feed them, let them get as big as they want to get.
Yeah, the problem I have with more people than anything, usually when I sell them to them, I tell them probably in 3 or 4 weeks they need to, they have that box filled up. They need to add their second box, and most of them, well, they'll call me about 2 or 3 weeks after that and tell me that they swamped it out. And I said, well, you got your other box on there? I'm trying to figure out why. No, I never did get out there and get that on it.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's another reason I really like for people to bring their own boxes, because typically they're going to bring a box that's an 8 frame or a 10 frame box. And I tell them, you need to watch as soon as they get about 80% of this drawed out, the other 3 frames or 5 frames, whichever it is, you need to get the other box on it. But it kind of gives them a little leeway. The nukes that come out of this yard, if they ain't got another box on it in 3 weeks, they're going to hit the trees.
Right. Yeah. When you got all that, I mean, when the box is full of bees and they got a lot of capped brood, as soon as that hatches, I mean, they fill the 10 frame box up.
Sure will.
So when I pick my nuke up from you in spring, you would recommend that I bring one of my 10 boxes and not get a nuke box for it?
You getting one from me?
I sure am, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I don't use 10 frame myself. I prefer 8 frame box just cause the weight, but yeah, 10 frame. You bring me the box and 5 extra frames on 10 frame, and we'll put them dudes right in there.
It's just what I happen to have.
Yeah, I would watch some of my videos on starter strips, because in the spring I really like the starter strips because you can put them in between the brood chamber, but yet you don't separate the brood chamber, and they'll just blow up in there. They'll work fine.
I have watched your beginning series. I am almost done with the intermediate, and I have watched stuff on frames. I'm going through it all.
Okay, great.
I'll tell you what I do on mine. I mean, I use starter strips, but I use plastic.
That's fine too. You don't have to use wax.
And buddy, they draw them just as good as they do wax, but I put several coats of wax on. What I like about it, you don't ever have to pull that strip out or anything. I mean, when you get ready to clean it up and re-wax it. But you have to take that top bar and plow it deeper, 3/16 of an inch deeper than what it comes. And then I'll shoot 3 brad nails scattered down it. If you don't plow it deeper, you don't catch enough meat. And when it's loaded with honey and you should try to shake bees off, it'll shake that whole thing loose. So you have to plow it deeper to catch more meat in it. And I think they work great.
Good to know, because I was going to take the plastic, because everything I have is plastic, but I was going to take some of them out and put starter strip in it and have that for the bees, and then keep the plastic for the top boxes for honey.
Mm-hmm.
I use
Go ahead.
I use my own wax and make my own foundation, and then have a embosser roller, and then I make my starter strips. I have found occasionally they won't touch the starter strip, and I think it's because maybe I went too heavy on the soapy water when I was running them through the embosser, and that might have caused them to not like it.
Do you not rinse you don't rinse yours after you're done?
Oop.
I put mine back in the total water and rinse them all off.
You know what? I didn't see that on your YouTube. God dang.
You know what?
Well,
I don't think I mentioned that either. Man, I think I did. Yeah, I did. You just wasn't paying attention.
I've watched some YouTubes where people try to clean plastic up. They take little brushes on the drills and different ways to clean it. The best way I've seen to do it is pop that plastic out and lay a piece of plywood on the ground, put a pair of shorts and flip-flops on in the summertime, take a high pressure washer, and you can blow everything off of them, clean them up quick. Mm-hmm. And you get all that scale out of the cells.
Car wash works good too.
A car wash?
Yeah, high pressure at the pressure at the car wash.
Yeah, you got to keep putting money in them now. Not unless you own the car wash, you may own it. I don't know.
I'll tell you what, you clean them up almost good enough to use again. Just put them in deep freeze and bring them out and bang them on the ground.
Oh yeah.
Just all that pops right off of there.
That's what I was getting ready to say. That's what I do.
Well, I've heard people just talk about cleaning the wax off of it and putting them back in so the bees will finish cleaning them up and draw back. That had never been my experience.
I never do get all that black and brown stuff out of the bottom of them, but I might tell I'll go out there when a couple of days in the wintertime when it's in the teens or 20s to let them sit out all night. I'll just go out there and just start banging them. Mm-hmm. All the wax that comes off of it, I'll put it in a little thing and use it every time I fire up the wood heater as a starter.
See, all of my frames were left in the woods and boxes from someone else. So they were kind of hand-me-downs given to me, and so they were wax moth, gross infested. And I was told I could just freeze them and put them back out there, but wasn't comfortable doing that. So I did pressure wash some of them. Some of them that didn't look too bad, I did freeze. So I'm going to try that with a couple of them. But frankly, I don't want to harvest honey off of the ones that I froze. That's still a little squeamish about that.
You can take the plastic out and take you a big storage bin, put bleach water in there and bleach them, for about a day, and it cleans those frames up real well.
I did that with the frames that I took everything off of and scraped everything off of. I bleached the frames and I power washed the plastic, and I'm putting those back in. Kind of gave them a little sanding just because I didn't want to propolyze too much of the burrs and get splinters in myself.
I don't like the way those frames look after the wax moths have been on them, though. I typically, they're just unsightly. I just toss them and start all over.
Thought about that. They did have some like grooves and stuff. I'm gonna try them. I might end up tossing them if the bees don't like them or if they put too much stuff on them.
No, yeah, they'll go back to it. If the frame is the only thing the wax moth damage is on, they'll do fine with that. gotta take all the
Great swamp rat,
nasty
too.
plastic and wax out of them. Well, typically frames.
Yeah, I got
don't-
everything off of them. It's just big dents where
Yeah.
the
Yeah, it won't hurt nothing. Hey, they live in trees. They won't pay a bit of attention to that.
Was your hive beetles worse this year, Joe?
I had no hive beetles this year.
Really? Well, they were. I hadn't had them too bad the last couple of years, but they're pretty bad this year.
We had them all here in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Yeah.
They all moved there, huh?
Yeah, they moved here this year.
I shouldn't
Well,
be telling. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I've kind of figured out if you can keep your numbers killed down, kind of under control each year, you don't have them too bad the next year. But I don't know. They were worse this year. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe it's because
We had too much wet ground. They have to. The ground was too moist for them, and that's what made them really.
they pupated a lot easier. Once I treated the ground, I got it under control.
Uh-huh.
But we had a wet. The ground never did really dry out completely all summer.
Right.
And that's just heaven for them. It wasn't just us. It went on down to the lower part of the state also.
We have been using milky spore for Japanese hive beetles for quite some time, or a little time. And when we did it, I think our hive beetles kind of went down. I haven't seen many hive beetles, seen a few, but not too many. And I was just curious if anybody else had any experience with that. We weren't trying to get the hive beetles, we were trying to get the Japanese beetles. But it seems like ours really diminished since we've done that.
Well, if that small hive beetle grub goes in the ground and eats anything, I think it would probably kill them.
But they'll probably still fly in. We have some, but don't have near the trouble I used to have. It could just be the year too. I have no scientific reasoning behind it at all. I don't know. I just know that.
What's the product again?
It's called milky spore for Japanese hive beetles. It's not real cheap, but the more hive beetles, the more Japanese beetles you have, the more they spread it around.
They use it, Bruce, to get rid of moles, because the moles eat the grubs, and you kill the grubs and the moles go away.
Japanese beetles are a problem here. I mean, I live in Missouri. I live in the north end of southwestern Missouri, and they've made it here. And sometimes they'll eat everything green they can find. And so we treated them with milky spore, and it controls them. And the more you have, the more they spread that milky spore around. And that kind of the same time frame that we've seen a lot less hive beetles. Now, I'm just wondering if anybody else has had any experience or know anything about it, because I really can't prove that that's the truth. But anyway,
what do those Japanese beetles look like?
You know what we used to call a June bug?
Yeah.
But they're a miniature version of that, kind of greenish.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Is that also
size?
Is that what you see in the compost pile? Is a big grub?
No,
It turns into a
they fly.
Japanese beetle?
No, they fly.
Yep, the grubs he's talking about. Yeah, Japanese bug grub is fairly good sized grub.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you that.
What did you start to say, Al?
One of the things that I found is that I have vent holes in all of my hives, and any place that I have a hole, I started using screen rather than 1/8" hardware cloth, because I've actually seen a beetle go through 1/2" or 1/8" hardware cloth.
Oh yeah.
Sure will.
So I use screen now in any vent.
I usually put the screen on first and then put the hardware cloth over it, so it kind of holds it and keeps from tearing up.
Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah.
Well, just what hives I probably usually run around 65, 75 hives here at the house. I'd say 3/4 of them are out in full sun. But where I have the problem with hive beetles is the ones I have sitting around the edge of the wood line. That's they get probably 4 times the beetles as the ones out in the sun.
Shade causes it. For
Yep.
sure.
Ground's drier out in the sun than it is around the shades.
Hive beetles won't pupate in dry ground.
Mhm.
They hunt moist, soft soil where they can pupate.
Well, guys, we've been out for about an hour and 10 minutes. It's been a blast. I think we're going to call it quits, and well, didn't get very many participants on tonight, but maybe it'll grow. I didn't do any get any guest speaker or anything.
It's not quantity, Joe, it's quality.
Well, I've got
There
a
you go.
bunch of guys that I hang around, pretty smart people. Yeah.
We
Yep.
just appreciate you having us, Joe. Thank you for having us.
Enjoyed it.
It gives some people a chance to talk about it a little bit, because you know you can't do much in your bees right now. Most of us can't, and get ideas. Some things work, and well, I'll have another one here in a week or two, and maybe I'll find somebody that wants to guest speak on it. So,
Sounds good.
thank you guys for coming.
Thanks, Joe.
Bye bye.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.